to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we will be your tour guides for this deep dive of Chad Stahelski's neo-noir gun-fu thriller series, John Wick, chapters 1 through 3.
Or I would have called it a neo-noir action revenge slasher flick.
Oh, slasher, interesting. Does it hit all the boxes of a slasher?
I don't know if it's a proper slasher movie, but basically I think that this John Wick is the slasher, but he's the protagonist. He's called a Baba Yaga the whole time. So I pretty much feel like this is kind of like if they were making like Friday the 13th or more like probably Friday the 13th, but from Jason's perspective,
from the POV of Jason.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
If assuming he had motivation to do all that stuff,
so
because you never know.
That would be a really interesting like film studies thesis to call this a slasher series and then make your argument, make the case.
I knew I was going a little bit out on a limb with that one, but it feels right.
Yeah, no, I think you could make that case pretty strongly. I think.
Yeah,
he has all the character. He has, or at least a lot of the characteristics, especially like
he's like an unkillable boogeyman.
Yeah, and he comes back when people think he's already dead. Yeah. He doesn't quite have the weapon of choice unless you just go broad guns.
Yeah.
He's pretty diversified, but yeah, you could make a strong case. I like that. I like that angle.
There's some interesting things in here also that there are elements of like samurai movie, like a Ronin flick. That's definitely strong. Keanu Reeves and Chad Stahelski, yeah.
Damn Polish names, they're just so hard.
I was watching the interviews with them, and it seems like these guys are like bros who kind of formulate this together, and they're both fans of all that stuff. Samurai movies, gun fu, like Hong Kong theater.
Yeah, like the John Woo movies. Yeah. And spaghetti westerns, especially in the third one, the western influence starts to come in more and more.
Yeah, I think
with
so.
the horseback riding and the 6-shooter and stuff. These are just love letters to action cinema in general and kind of pan-genre action cinema. Yeah,
and another little factoid that doesn't really fit anywhere in the review process, its original title is cooler than what they went with as John Wick. It was supposed to be called Scorn.
Scorn?
I like that.
Yeah, that's hard. It's I do like that as a title. It's not as necessarily evocative, right? Like, it's a little harder to sell it. I watched that first John Wick trailer and was sort of reminded why I didn't see the movie in the first place. I was like, they make this movie seem corny, and it's not. I don't really feel that watching it.
No, I don't really think it's corny. It's interesting how this was sold. It's really a revenge movie. It's very simple. The first one.
The first one is
extremely simple, straightforward. Another random fact about John Wick is because I'm a nerd and I always Google like whatever movie or whatever we're doing, if there's like an RPG adaptation or like a homebrew or something. John Wick is the name of an RPG developer who's done dozens of indie titles.
Oh, that's weird.
Evidently, he's a creepster, so that's not a good thing. But that only came out recently. But if you look at his stuff that he's designed over the years, he's done a lot of role-playing stuff, mostly like fantasy. Okay. So it's really hard to find anything for this. And really, if anybody is trying to play this as a role-playing game, the consensus is that you use there's a kind of a Hong Kong theater based game called Feng Shui. Okay. And that's the game to use. It's the one. So
I've not heard of that game.
I've never heard of it either. I read about it and I was like, this seems cool. I'm not going to buy it because I don't think I would ever play it. Yeah. But it seems cool.
Yeah. It'd just be one of those books on your shelf that you impulse buy.
I have way too many of those.
Yeah, but that's what the shelves are for.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I always like to give the budget information on these movies. Mm-hmm. So the first one was made for between $20 and $30 million.
Yeah, which is nothing.
Yeah, they started with 20 and they got a little more as they went forward. And it made 86. Yeah. So that's pretty decent. The second one was made for $40 million, still nothing. And it made $171 million. And then the third one was made for $75 million, and it made $327 million. So it's just, even percentage-wise, it's doing better and better and better and better
each time.
And so it's pretty crazy.
I think the movies actually get stronger. I mean, because this was Chad Stahelski started as a stuntman. He was Keanu's stunt double in the Matrix films. And then he went from that into doing a lot of second unit directing, like shooting the action sequences and choreographing them. So this is his first unit feature film directorial debut, and it's a really strong movie for your first movie.
I think John Wick, the first one, is the strongest of the bunch. But
really?
And I say that even though it is the simplest, I say it because there's a purity of message.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. It's got an emotional bent to it. It's mysterious. They don't get too far in the weeds.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool. But yeah, I like all of them quite a lot. Obviously we're going to go see John Wick 4 and then do a hot take on it. But as I was deep diving this, there's a spinoff coming called Ballerina.
Oh, okay. That's not the one I know about.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of the other one. The Ballerina is, you remember the scene in the
third one,
the Roma, the Ruska Roma? Is that the order? The Ruska Roma place when he goes and talks to the director and whatnot, and there's the ballerinas who are training to be assassins. The lady has the same tattoos as John Wick. It's about her.
Oh, Angelica Houston's character?
No.
Or just one of the
ballerina. Yeah.
Okay.
About one of those ballerinas.
Okay,
and so,
interesting.
And it's confirmed that Keanu and Ian McShane will be in that movie.
Oh, okay. And so this is a movie, because there's also the Continental TV series.
Oh, okay.
That's supposed to premiere. They started production in 2021, and that's supposed to premiere on Peacock this year sometime.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Ballerina's in post production.
Oh, okay. So it's
already been
shot. Wrapped and stuff. Interesting. Do you know who's directing that?
I didn't look too far into it because I just figured we'll just see that.
We'll get to it when it happens. Yeah, yeah. Because I was getting very interested in the Continental show.
When is that coming? Oh, so you said like
it's this year. Okay. Yeah, it's this year, but there's not a release on Peacock.
Balls.
I know it was on Starz, and then Starz sold it to Peacock.
Man, I hate Peacock because they want you to get their streaming service. They don't bundle with anybody else. And like, it's not even the same as Paramount Plus.
No, it's a totally different company.
What the hell?
It's the NBC.
Nobody wants just NBC.
Yeah, they're trying real hard to all of the networks.
They all want $5 a month.
Yeah, basically, and rebuild cable. We're just rebuilding cable a la carte.
I am not willing to do it because I'll forget, and they will bill me until oblivion.
Yeah.
So.
That's the game.
Yeah, that is the game. So what I do is I go to YouTube or Amazon, depending, and I buy the season for the price. It's like $25 usually, and you get a whole season of a show. And then that's 5 months worth of billing, but I can't forget one-time expenditure, and I only buy what I want.
Yeah, and you own it, and that way you're doing it on the up and up, and everyone gets their
points and all that. I prefer it on YouTube because the YouTube library is really easy to access and look through.
Well, that's cool.
Anyway, we're kind of getting off.
Yeah, we're rambling. Shall we roll for initiative?
Yeah, let's roll for initiative.
Okay.
17.
I win for once.
Whoa! Holy crap!
All right. So my first news item is for the second time or third time, depending on how you're counting, the Hellboy franchise is being rebooted. Millennium Media announced plans for a new live-action Hellboy reboot titled Hellboy: The Crooked Man, with Brian Taylor directing and Jack Casey starring as the titular Hellboy, from a script from Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy. So this will be the third time that they've started a Hellboy franchise. The Guillermo del Toro version is much beloved.
Yeah.
The second the first reboot or the second version of it, where David Harbour played Hellboy, was fairly maligned and terrible.
Sure.
Although he's great, and Ian McShane's great in it. There's some good stuff, but that movie sucked. So I'm a little trepidatious about this because the last one went so badly, but it seems like it has it's more focused on a particular story. And so hopefully this one ends up being better.
And is this movie or series? TV?
This is a movie.
Okay. You know, I don't dislike Hellboy at all. I think it's good. But I really wish they would just do some, I say they, like nebulously Hollywood would stop just going back to the same well.
Yeah.
Give us some new titles. Like, I mean, it's cool when they do something new. Like when The Boys came out, that was, it was a different comic book title. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm all for them doing, like, give us like a Savage Dragon or Max. That would be cool.
Just some character that hasn't been done from a cool indie comic. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
I just don't think I need another
Hellboy. No, especially after. Well, I mean, you had it done so well. Del Toro is a genius in my opinion.
He kind of killed it. Like,
yeah, and Ron Perlman was so iconic as the character that it's even another great actor has a hard time filling those shoes. So
I agree.
So what you got?
All right, so I have a couple things here, but they're very different. So I'm going to go with the nerdiest one first, and that is something I posted on Facebook, so you probably already checked it out. The Shadow Dark Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah, I did look at that.
When this podcast drops, you'll still have a couple of weeks to back it if you're interested. And if you don't want to, and if you don't make it, if you're listening to this down the road, because we do have a lot of divers that listen to us months after the fact. Our old listens keep going up.
Well, a lot of times they go and watch the thing or whatever we're talking about, and then they go listen to the episode.
That makes sense. So this is a Kickstarter. Oh, and what I was saying was you can still buy it online. You'll be able to buy this. It's already been written, and you can, this is not a thing that will go away. So it's called Shadow Dark. It's a role playing game, and it's a hybrid. It's kind of a hybrid between a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragon hack. So it's using a D20 with a roll high idea. So every D&D player will have an easy in on this game. And it's crossed with the OSR, which is Old School Renaissance or Old School Revival.
Okay.
There's a bunch of games out there that are really hearkening back to those days of the 80s where games were gritty and lo-fi and grim and dark. So this basically, it says that, here's their copy. It says 5e players will find what they've been waiting for in an intuitive and complete tabletop RPG that serves as a seamless bridge into the heart of the Old School Renaissance. And then the other bullet point was, old school gamers will find a system that is familiar and nostalgic, but with major quality of life upgrades that modernize the old school experience.
Yeah.
So this seems pretty cool to me. There's only 4 base classes in the book. Of course, there will be expansions that add some more stuff, but it's just like wizard, thief, fighter, priest. That's it.
Yeah.
You roll your stats on 3d6. Your hit points are low. Life is cheap. The system is simple. Yeah. Just boneheadedly simple.
Just going back to that old D&D flavor. Yeah.
Like you choose a background for your character. Like, oh yeah, my character's, a hunter. That's my background. So rather than us having a whole list of skills that you are, that would make sense for a hunter to have, just anytime during the story when it would make sense that a hunter would be good at this, you simply get advantage on that roll. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a hunter. I can track things. Okay, advantage. Oh, I'm a hunter. I can skin this animal. Great, advantage, Yeah. So it just makes it very simple. And I think this is actually a way to introduce people to Dungeons and Dragons in a much easier way.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about D&D is all... it started out simple, but then as people kind of want to do more variant things, new classes and multi-classes and all of this stuff gets introduced in order to do all the different things. Because like people's imagination is limitless, right? And so, you're like, well, what if was like this and this, and like you start imagining things, and then there has to be rules to accommodate that, and then eventually you get to the point where there's so many books and so many rules that it just becomes impenetrable for a new person.
Yeah, for sure. And a veteran player and dungeon master like me, I like if I put out a thing, hey, I'm looking for some D&D players I want to play, I'll get everybody just, oh, D&D, that means everything's on the buffet. It's crazy time because 5th edition is just, there's so much to it. It's insane. One of the cool things that they did in this game, because I downloaded the quick start rules and read them and whatnot, is they don't have level up charts like you would have in D&D.
Okay.
Like oh yeah, at 2nd level you get this ability. At 3rd level you get this ability. Characters can only go to 10th level. That's the top. And every time you level up, you get more hit points, and you roll on the advancement chart. You roll 2d6, and you get a random class-based bonus. Oftentimes it's stat buffs. Sometimes it's bonuses to hit with certain types of abilities. If you roll really high, you roll like boxcars, you get a better ability.
Yeah.
It's never bad, though. Even if you roll snake eyes, it's either good, great, or amazing.
Yeah.
So it's never a feels bad moment when you level up.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool, because then the characters are like, if you have a level 5 fighter and I have a level 5 fighter, they're not the same.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it is possible, but it's not probable.
It's not probable. Yeah. Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. I just think this is really cool. I haven't backed it yet because I've been wanting to talk to friends about it, because like I said, I don't want to back a game and never play it.
Right.
But I think I've talked to enough people that if I bought it and I ran it, I think people would play.
Probably.
Especially because, I'll have the PDFs so everyone can. But you really don't need them. You could just show up.
Yeah. I mean, I like that.
With an idea like, oh, I want to play like the thief guy from the Conan movie. Perfect.
Yeah. And that fits, I like to play story-based.
Oh,
and just...
This is actually perfect for you and Lisa and other people who prefer story, not crunch.
Yeah, because I hate that stuff. I mean, I have ideas, and it's fun when you get new things, but I hate just being bogged down with numbers.
Forget it.
Yeah, like I'm really bad at that. I'd be like, oh yeah, I have this skill that I paid points to get, and I never use it because I just forget about it.
You're not even that bad. I run a game for some new players, and they literally forget everything. I have to like tell them, oh, you could do this like all the time, every game. You
know what? I think part of that comes from some of these shows, like like Harmon Quest or Critical Role. The DM seems to handle everything because it'd be boring watching people rolling and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they get interested in this stuff. They don't see how much number crunching there is when they're watching it in the media.
Or when you see a team of literal professional D&D players.
Yeah.
They just know all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's just weird like that. All right, that was kind of long form. So what do you got?
I've got two. I'm going to let you pick one. I got an obituary and another movie announcement.
Let's save the obit for last. I like to end on a downer.
Oh, you want? Well, I figure you did two, and I'll do two. So whichever one you pick, it's going to be just one of them.
Oh no! Okay, let's go with the movie.
Okay, the movie is a new Alien film was announced by 20th Century Studios.
Nice.
With Ridley Scott again producing. It's got the working title of Alien Romulus, and again, it's in the same timeline with Prometheus and Alien Covenant. So it is a prequel to the original Ridley Scott Alien. And Fede Alvarez is going to be the director, screenwriter, and producer. He's done some horror movies, it looks like The Girl in the Spider's Web and Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake.
Okay.
And so there's not a lot that we know about this other than Ridley Scott is involved, and it is set in between Covenant and the original Alien.
Wow. I wonder how many of these prequels they're going to make.
I don't know. 3 is usually the number, right?
Yeah,
but the original Alien series was a quadrilogy, so maybe they'll do 4.
I'll keep watching them. I like them.
I still haven't seen Covenant, honestly.
I did. It was
with Danny McBride. It looks cool. everyone hates on Prometheus, but I really liked that movie. But
no, Prometheus is great.
Yeah, I'm in the bag for Ridley Scott. I just think I like what he puts down in general.
He's a master.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
All right, so let's wrap that up, and I guess we should get to the podcast fuel.
All right, let's go ahead and what do we got here? This is really tasty. So.
Oh, you're liking it? See,
yeah.
I usually steer away from anything imperial with you, but this is a beer that's been around for a while. It's Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout from North Coast Brewing Company in Fort Bragg, California. I thought it was on theme with the Baba Yaga, as it's a Russian Imperial Stout, and it's produced in the tradition of 18th century English brewers who supplied the court of Russia and Catherine the Great, and they would ship these Imperial Stouts across over to Russia.
Interesting.
And so this beer's had a cult following for a long time. It's an intense brew with big complex flavors and a warming finish. It's got an ABV of 9%.
Wow.
And the IBUs got cut off when I cut it, so no one cares about that anyway. It's not bitter at all.
IBUs. No, this is malty as hell.
Yeah, it's very it's as syrupy and thick as it can be without being cloying.
Yeah, I agree. It's right on that edge. You know, I generally do like Imperials, like Imperial IPAs and stuff like that. So
yeah, and it's I went for these bottles instead of the big bombers because
Good.
I know you have to drive to the airport after this, so I didn't want to get you slizzard.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be drinking a whole bomber on my own. That'd be insane. All right, so I guess let's go ahead and take a break, come back with our deep dive of John Wick.
Welcome back, divers. Let's dive into John Wick, chapters 1 through 3, directed by Chad Stahelski. Widower and retired hitman John Wick is drawn back into the underworld he left behind by a mission of revenge when the heir of a criminal family foolishly murders his dog and steals his car. After his revenge is consummated, he finds himself unable to return to a life in retirement a second time when an old associate calls in a marker and puts him back to work. But after the job is completed, Mr. Wick finds himself to be a loose end that needs tying up, setting him at odds with the mysterious High Table. And after violating the rules of the Continental Hotel, John finds himself on the run and calling in every favor left to him just to survive long enough to reach the mysterious elder that sits above the High Table to beg for a chance at redemption. So that's my brief synopsis of 3 movies.
I summed it up even simpler. Number 1, John versus the mob. Number 2, John completes his blood oath but breaks the rules. Number 3, John on the run, seeking redemption, and decides the price is too high.
Wow, we got all the same points in there. I like that. Yeah, I think we got this movie. Luckily, it's not very complicated.
No, it's simple. I mean, seriously, number 1, John versus the mob.
Yeah.
Very easy. Like, I mean, you can really just sum this up in an elevator pitch where it's like, guy kills his dog and steals his car, and so he goes on a rampage and gets revenge. It's just a revenge film. I love it.
Yeah, that's not my favorite genre. Like, I don't think I love it as much as you do. But I think it's very well made. There's a lot of craft and and I enjoy it. And then as the world unfolds in 2 and 3, I just enjoy it more. Like it keeps giving me new breadcrumbs that get me interested in more things.
I was really wishing that this was something from a fiction book series that I could go and read, like Rima Williams books or whatever.
Right.
You know, like there's just a lot of cool sort of bro fiction like this. I was hoping that the world of the High Table and the Continental was a thing that there were novels about.
Interesting. See, I mean, part of what I like about it is that all the things that you don't know. I think that makes it cooler. Like that we don't know, and we won't know until they tell us, basically. Sure. And when they tell us, they always bring in 3 new mysteries, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fortunately, we're going to get a lot more content because
I think
is printing money.
Yeah, and money chases money, basically.
Yeah, because there's going to be, obviously, John Wick 4 is coming out. They've already talked about John Wick 5.
Yeah.
It's already been in discussion. Proto phase. We've got Ballerina. We've got Continental. So yeah, we're going to be steeped in John Wick for probably another decade.
Yeah, I mean, easily. Should we? And I think the world itself, even if the character naturally sunsets, because it seems like he must at some point. Or at least transition into a new phase. Like if he becomes the Winston character at some point.
Or if he gets a seat at the high table.
Yeah, we're making predictions for the next movie.
I think he kills the Elder in the next movie.
You think? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It could be. Yeah, we'll find out in a couple weeks. I'm interested. Yeah. Should we get to our first segment, storytelling?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
So right off the bat, I feel a little bad. We named an episode after kicking Chad Stahelski in the face.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, that's a Scorpion Kick Your Chad.
Oh, yeah.
And now I feel bad because he's a really good director.
The name Chad has become it's the male version of the Karen.
Yeah, but it was literally him that got kicked in the face.
It was. That's great. He's awesome. This guy and watching him in interviews, he's like a really chill dude.
Yeah, I like him, and I like the sort of mind meld him and Keanu seem to have done in their time working together. Like, they sort of have you seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I don't
because
think so.
It's about Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. Their characters where DiCaprio is an actor and Brad Pitt plays his stuntman, and the two guys become very enmeshed with each other. And it sort of reminded me of this, like their relationship when you see them with each other, like they're sort of like brothers. They've become brothers.
It does seem that way, that they're really tight. And when they talk about John Wick stuff, they complete each other's sentences.
Yeah. It's their baby. Like, I think Keanu is as much an auteur on this as Stahelski is.
Yeah, he was talking a lot about how, he was really interested in, the weaponry and the specifics of the martial arts styles and the various things. So, and of course, the driving stuff. He seems to be most enthusiastic about driving scenes.
Yeah, so he does... I guess this fits loosely under storytelling, but Keanu does so much of that stuff, of his own stunts and his own stunt driving and everything.
You think Chad steps in and does a stuntman thing for him?
No, it's a different. He has there's a stunt driver and another stuntman that doubles for Keanu when necessary. Things that you can't risk your movie star on. Yeah, but Keanu does a lot of pretty intense stunts in these movies. But I would say, storytelling wise, even though these are mainly just like action movies, like they're just action sequences that lead into other action sequences. There was a trend before this movie and this series came out away from readable action. Like the way like Chris Nolan shoots action scenes very up close, and there's lots of like, you hear a lot of impact, but it's hard to see what's going on or whatever. And this is more of an old school where the camera's fuller back, you're in a wide shot, and you see everything.
Yeah, I actually talk a little bit about that in the visuals and cinematography section about the action sequences. Yeah. But I think as far as storytelling goes, the action is a big part of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
The way that John fights is indicative of how he is. Like, he likes to get his hands on people. Yeah. He grapples, he does judo, and when he shoots people at point blank range all the time. It's not necessary at all, but he does. It just tells you a lot about him. Did you have more storytelling stuff?
Yeah, because I was thinking the way the action sequences are part of the storytelling. It's not like the story takes a break and then the action sequence happens. They are enmeshed in the storytelling, and they have such a strong sense of flow and geography of how they move the characters from A to B on the map. Yeah. So, again, like, it's just for a first effort, and, these are his only feature films on his IMDb that he's directed. His storytelling instincts are just really strong. Yeah. And so my other note in this section, and maybe I just didn't know where this would go, but I came into this series late. This is the first time I've watched these.
Okay.
So I've seen lots of things influenced by these movies. Like, these movies are just extremely influential in the way this sort of story is told now. Everyone sort of emulates these movies.
Yeah, I saw these as they came out in the theater, and like when the first one came out, I was pretty blown away by it, so I had to keep going back.
Yeah, and so that just takes us, for me anyway, into the visual category. That's kind of the next thing.
So the other things I would add to the storytelling thing is I feel like this is an interesting subversion of this action style, because this is like a reverse love story.
Yeah.
You learn about, in the first movie specifically, you learn about his life and all of this sort of as it goes along.
Yeah.
And so it reminded me of, what was that one movie that we saw not too long ago in the Cyberpunk series with the Future Crimes Unit or whatever?
Oh, yeah, Minority Report.
Yeah, it kind of had a Minority Report vibe with how you learn about the love story as it goes along.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how he's stuck in the past.
Well, this is a very, I talk about that a bit more in the visuals. It's very cyberpunk influenced, even though there's no cyber.
It's because it's neo-noir,
Yeah.
and that's cyberpunk's jam.
Yeah, but it's the neon colors and the constant raining and everything. Like, that feels more on the cyberpunk side than the noir side.
I mean, but is that surprising at all with the guys from The Matrix?
No, not it's not at all. It's almost like something newer than neo-noir. Like, it's neo-noir because neo-noir,
and his name is Neo in
Yeah.
The Matrix.
Yeah, that's very meta. Yeah, because the neo-noir thing was really in the 80s. That's an 80s aesthetic, and this is very now, or the teens. I guess we're into a new decade.
We're in
again.
the 20s.
Yeah, now we're in the 20s.
Yeah, I agree. And I was saying earlier, as far as storytelling goes, this takes some samurai movie tropes and adds them in, and I think they do it pretty tastefully. It has things that I really like about mob movies.
Yeah.
It's kind of got that if you know vibe, and as viewers we don't actually know, but we're seeing all these guys who all know the secret handshake.
Yeah, I love that. And
it's like really cool to see it develop. It's like you're not in on the story. And so you're learning it as you watch it, and you're trying to puzzle it out. And
that is good to put that in the storytelling segment, because that is, to me, a much more engaging technique than expositing about things.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah, because you get the feeling when, so the first time he goes to the Continental hotel, and he pulls up to the Flatiron Building in New York City and goes in, and then that's not the interior of the Flatiron Building. It's the interior of some other vintage hotel.
Yeah.
And then you just start to get glimpses of this world, the gold coins and all of the other hit people.
Yeah. Everybody knows him. He's like a celebrity.
Yeah. And so you just get these hints of this world. And the first movie is really, like you say, it's just a revenge thriller crime movie. Mm-hmm. And then with the second film, you start laying on sort of espionage, say James Bond type tropes into it.
Yeah, there's definitely
and then
James Bond.
And then the John Woo Hong Kong stuff, and then by the third movie you're laying in samurai and ninja stuff and Western things, and it just keeps adding more and more layers to it.
Yeah, I think that. So I have that in my storytelling section as well. I think this is James Bond, but for the modern day.
Yeah.
James Bond was, a classy guy who was a government agent or whatever. This guy he's a classy guy who's an underground operator. This is just sort of like an ultra modern take on this professional killer.
Yeah, but he's not like an agent of a state. He's this is a total subversive world. It's something outside the world of states.
Yeah. I think that it's got that same vibe, though.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right, so I'm ready to move on to visuals.
Yeah.
The cinematography, I think in the first movie they stick to the script, so to speak, really closely. How it looks really austere and bleak all the time.
Yeah. And we have two different cinematographers. So Jonathan Sella is the cinematographer on the first movie, and then Dan Lawston is the cinematographer for 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, okay. So the new ones are going to have that newer look.
Yeah. So that's part of what the visual difference between the first movie and then the sequels.
I thought the first one looked the best.
Interesting.
It had a washed out bleak look. Most of the colors were cool.
Yeah.
There was almost no warm colors except in the flashback scenes with his wife, in which case they were warm, warm tones like pink and cream and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really great visual storytelling. I highly enjoyed that.
That's almost a reverse of what the typical trope would be, right? Where usually the flashbacks are in like a sepia sort of tone, and the modern day is in the full on, and it's the reverse because his life ended right when his wife died, and so that warm life is gone, and he's gone back into this underworld life.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning, like, the first movie takes place just like days after she dies, so he is in his darkest his darkest moment. It's not like this is years later and he's still moping about. He's like in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, grief doesn't have a timeline, but pretty much within a week, you're guaranteed to be
be grieving. Yeah.
The world is hell to wake up to. I really you mentioned it previously about the readability of the combat scenes. They made a conscious choice to do long cut action scenes and single take action scenes rather than and then showing them rather than chopping them up with edits and doing lots of close-ups on things, like watching the fist hit the chest and blah blah blah. They don't do any of that. They let it flow. This reminds me of Bruce Lee movies. Yeah, and there's like a strong Game of Death and Enter the Dragon vibes here and there. Like, it's so good.
I mean, John Wick Chapter 2 ends in a mirror room, and that's definitely an homage to Enter the Dragon. It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Hong Kong cinema is the biggest overarching influence on this. That's what they're most stylistically hearkening to.
And when the fight scene with like, there's so many good fight scenes, you can't really call them out. But the best example of the long flow fight scene is with John Wick versus Zero, played by Mark Dacascos.
Oh, so good. I love him.
Perfect scene. It's so good. Mark Dacascos is a legend, and I really, really enjoyed that scene.
Yeah, he's someone, that if you're not into low budget martial arts movies, you probably have no idea who this guy is, even though you've probably seen him quite a bit in things.
He's been a lot of bad guys.
He's been a lot of bad guys. Yeah, he's been a lot of bad guys. But he's been a lot of good guys.
That's
too.
True, yeah.
Yeah. He's the star of a lot of directive VHS action movies.
I met him at I can't remember what year it was. I think it was like 1999 or 1997. World International Kung Fu Championships in San Francisco that I went to.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, he was there. And I had some buddies from my Kung Fu school fighting in that. So I went and watched it. And yeah, he's a really cool guy. And so I've always liked to watch his movies ever since I met him.
He played the Crow in the TV show of The Crow. Yeah. I watched, we'll just geek on him for a little bit. There was like one of those History Channel documentaries about Miyamoto Musashi, where he went around, and he's mixed race, but he's of Japanese descent, and he goes around Japan to like places in Musashi's story, and it's a really cool documentary.
That sounds rad.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoy him, and like when he showed up as the sushi chef,
a sushi master, I was like,
slash ninja. It's like, oh, that's so awesome. That's great casting.
Yeah, preview to the casting section or the performances section.
My first note on the visuals is the neo-noir visual aesthetic. We already talked about it. this is another way these movies have been hugely influential. I've been saying for a while that when sometime in the future, when people are copying the look of the 2010s, it's going to have a ton of blue and pink neon lighting in it.
Yeah.
And I did not realize that came from these movies. I just kind of was like, what?
The blue neon is everywhere.
Yeah. And I was just like, because you see it in so many movies from like the last decade, and it's like, to the point where by 2020 or 2019, at the end of the decade, it just starting to seem very cliche.
Yeah.
And it's like, where did this come from? It came from John Wick. I had no idea.
You should have been on this.
I should have been on it. Yeah. But it's just like the Fast and the Furious movies, in that it gets away from you. Like I remember when
it's easy to write those off.
When the third one came out, you messaged me and you're like, hey, do you want to go see John Wick 3? And I was like, I haven't seen 1 and 2. And it's like once you get like a stack of the movies, it starts getting to be like, oh, it's a lot to get through to catch up on this. But now we've done it.
Yeah, for sure. Finally did it. I was gonna call out the lighting and the cinematography. I feel like everything looks really intentional. Like Keanu is always kind of uplit when he's doing dramatic scenes and downlit when he's doing action scenes. I feel like they do some really smart and subtle things with the camera, like, and it's not all the time and in your face. Like there's a couple times in, I think it was movie 2, where John is like wading through the nightclub or whatever, and blood splatter gets on the camera lens. Yeah, and it's just momentary, and then it's gone.
I do like blood splatter on the camera lens, and it's a simple thing because it also can obfuscate something like a cut or a stunt double or something like that, but it's one of those things that makes you feel embedded in it.
I jerked my head away.
Yeah,
like it came at me, I was like, whoop.
Yeah, like that. It gives you that, and that's the thing. When we're talking about that, the cinematography. So Dan Lawson, who's the cinematographer for 2 and 3, I've never seen anyone shoot movies the way that he does. Watching the behind the scenes stuff, the example that comes out at me is in chapter 2 in the catacombs in Rome. They have several different camera people with steady cams on, and they include them in the choreography so that they're running around and filming this, and they have to be in the choreography so they don't see each other, right?
Oh, okay.
And so they're shooting the whole sequence as John's going through the catacombs and switching guns and everything and shooting people, and they're going along with him and filming the whole thing. And that gives you like 4 angles of every fight that you can cut through like interchangeably, because they're all perfectly synced with each other, because they're not different takes. It's all one take. They just shoot the whole thing. I've never seen that done like that.
Yeah, it is really interesting because they kind of pass the baton of who's the active camera. But it's very seamless because Keanu is just running through there. It's like one take.
And I think that comes from, what's their stunt company? It's like 87 something. That's Chad Stahelski's his like stunt house or whatever.
Yeah.
And that comes from the way they shoot their previs videos as they choreograph action sequences. They're used to the guys shooting their own shit, basically, right? So it's like that sort of embedded camera is just built into their DNA. And and it makes something that's not easily imitatable. I don't think. I think it's something very unique to these movies.
Yeah, I think that you're onto something there. The way that they have the camera makes it feel like you're in the fight. It kind of swirls around you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really cool. I did notice a thing about just the visuals of the movie. I like how the different locations, once John finally leaves New Jersey and New York.
Right. And these are mainly New York movies, but we do get out of town eventually.
Every time he leaves, it's a stark contrast. Like when he's in Rome, it looks different. Like the movie just looks different. And And I mean, the Rome scenes are pretty cool. It's almost like a vampire movie, the way it's lit. And then when he goes to Morocco in number 3, it looks very different. And I think that's an interesting and cool way to kind of just put you in a different mindset, because then when you go back to New York, they go back to that previous lighting look and style, and it's like you're immersed again. It's like putting on a familiar jacket.
Yeah, it's a very Blade Runner New York, right? In that it's always raining and you have the neon lights. And then Morocco, it's definitely, Morocco has a vibe. Rome has a vibe, like, and they're
very different from all other locations.
They're all very unique. Yeah, that's a good call out. My next call out in the visuals is Luca Mosca's costume design, because the suits and everything are such an iconic part of this movie. And Luca, he makes a cameo as John Wick's tailor in the second movie, which
that's really cool.
It's meta and it's cool because I like that everyone kind of gets their screen time in these movies, all the people that are involved in them. And they're all such important pieces of the puzzle. So I like that because the suit, like you mentioned, James Bond. Yeah. James Bond's like cocktail jacket and stuff. Like those are part of what makes the character iconic. And John's black suit is definite, like European cut, 2-button suit.
Well, and it's really like it's really subtle. Like you're used to seeing John in a black suit, white white shirt, black tie, and this is standard. And then when he agrees to work for the High Table again, after he talks to the elder, next time you see him, he's in a black suit, but instead of a white shirt, it's a black shirt.
Yeah,
and he wears that until he decides to change his mind and go rogue again,
and puts on the white shirt.
In a white shirt.
Yeah. And that's very Joseph Campbell. George Lucas did the same thing in Star Wars. As the closer Luke gets to the dark side, he goes towards the black outfit, right? As he's dipping into the dark side things, where he starts out in the white kimono in the first movie.
And it's subtle. It's not. I mean, it seems obvious when you point it out, but unless you're analyzing a film and looking for costume details, it just seems, John looks pretty sinister right now.
Yeah. I think you, even if you're not analyzing it, I think you feel those things, but you only notice it when you're analyzing, if you know what I mean. Like the layperson understands subconsciously the implication, but they're not like, this is classic storytelling.
Well, it's like it's a cowboy hat.
The white hat, black hat. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally, exactly.
I love that.
That's all. Those things are so ingrained in us, you don't think about them necessarily.
That's all I've got for the visuals and cinematography, which is a pretty robust category for this movie.
It is, especially for 3 movies.
Yeah.
So that brings us to audio.
This one is not a huge category for me.
Okay.
There are some things that I didn't love. The Marilyn Manson song, I didn't need to hear that more than one time.
There's a Marilyn Manson song?
Yeah.
In which one?
Number 2.
In number 2. Okay. I haven't got that far in this. I was listening to the soundtrack, so I hadn't finished it.
They play it twice, and it goes on for quite a long time. Yeah. I actually thought that the music in number 2 was the worst of the bunch. Okay. I even liked it better when they were just playing like dubstep music during the fighting or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that this movie doesn't seem scored in a traditional way. You don't have, like a John Williams score or whatever. And so there are rock songs or whatever here and there, but I like it better when it's not trying trying to take you for a thrill ride with a song, just leave the rock and roll out of it. I don't need that.
So the composers are Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richards. They do the score for all 3 films. Le Castlevania is the DJ that does the dubstep parts, during the fights. And then there's a female vocalist called Nostalgia who she even gets some
Castlevania and Nostalgia. Gotcha.
Yes. How did that get behind me that it's Castlevania? I even said it out loud, and I still didn't hear it yet because of the space in between. Yes. So nostalgia. I like her vocals. Like she gets some screen time in chapter 2, and
is the singer on the stage.
Yeah, and I was like, this is cool. I'd like to go to this concert. It's sort of the feeling I had, like in Rome under the arch. This cool electronic. I don't know. It's kind of like a diva vocalist with electronic dance music behind it. I'm into that.
Seemed cool.
I don't need, like you said, the needle drops, Marilyn Manson, or even like the Jerry Cantrell song from the closing credits. We're on record. We like Alice in Chains, but I did an eye roll at the Jerry Cantrell. It just felt out of place.
Yeah, I just feel like they were trying to monetize some stuff. I don't know.
But I like Tyler Bates and Joel Richards' scores, and they do some really cool stuff. Like, for one, blending it with the dubstep music very well. Like, when the dubstep kicks in, there's going to be some shit going down.
There's fighting.
Yeah. And then, like, in the third movie, they start dropping in, like, these spaghetti western cues, like when John gets the 6-shooter. Yeah. And it kind of does, like, a little Sergio Leone sort of thing. And it's like, okay, I understand what you're doing. That's like, fun. I like that. So I like the score, and I include Castlevania and nostalgia in the score part of it. They're not needle drops to me. Like,
those are the good parts. Yeah. We can do away with the soundtrack. Keep the score, get rid of the soundtrack.
Yeah, but then you can sell 2 albums. You can sell a score album and a original soundtrack album.
Yeah.
But no one buys albums.
No. I mean, people will buy they'll just listen to it on Spotify.
Otherwise, there was good sound design, like the splats and the crunches and the all
sound
that
design
stuff
was just fine.
Yeah,
it wasn't the standout in this movie, but it was serviceable.
Yeah, there's been some things we've watched where the sound design is exceptional, and
it just blows you away.
And I wouldn't, I wouldn't put this into that.
No, this is a visual movie.
Yeah, totally. So we can roll on to themes and motifs.
I mean, obviously, we've been talking about themes and motifs this whole time.
Yeah.
How this is just a revenge movie.
Yeah.
How there's like a embedded reverse love story. Mm-hmm. How there's we've got the Ronin samurai theme. We have all kinds of like
the man with no name sort of thing. Oh, he has a name, but it's still that trope, the Western.
Yeah, this is a movie that has a lot of these like mob movie vibes, kung fu movie vibes, but it feels like everything that they choose to do and kind of incorporate as an influence, they amp it to 11, so much so that it borders on a fantasy movie.
It's definitely I called it a surreality. It's like it's its own counter reality that exists alongside our reality.
Yeah.
Which I think it's a cool idea, a cool concept. Like we love these sort of hidden societies and Illuminati things.
And even the physics aren't always the same, and nobody heals that fast. And
they take those pills.
Oh yeah, the magic pills.
The magic pill that will allow you to.
You'll tear your stitches out, but you'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Yeah, it's part of the sort of surreality that is gradually introduced from the first film.
I want to get some of those pills.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to do irreparable damage to yourself. So themes, the theme of the whole series, and it starts getting stated very explicitly, is consequences.
Yeah.
The actions have consequences, or karma, the law of cause and effect. And Vigo, played by Michael Nyqvist in the first film, he straight up tells John, he goes, "This life follows you. It clings to you, infecting everyone that comes close to you. We are cursed, you and I." And so John he's both the embodiment of consequences to his victims. Like, he is the rewards that they reap from the life that they've lived, but then he's also the recipient of consequences from his own life choices, the life that he can't escape. And then, by the third movie, John is saying consequences all the time. He says it to Sophia and he says it to Zero, I think. And it's like, they're just beating you over the head. That's what the whole series is about, is the consequences of your actions.
Yeah. And I mean, it's pretty clear that this is a movie about, or this is a series about, like a swinging pendulum, and, you can never escape you can never get out of the cycle.
Yeah.
No matter how much you try, you can never get out of it. It's good.
So even even when John was all the way out of it, karma still got him with tragedy, right? His wife dies. And then he's dragged back into this life. I mean, it makes me wonder, because at some point you do have to provide some sort of resolution to this. He has to either get out he dies. Or commit to it. Do you think he dies?
I mean, if I were the storyteller, I think at some point John dies at the end of a movie, like a John Wayne movie, like Shane.
Well, I mean, Shane, he doesn't die; he just rides off.
I guess so, or it's the Cowboys where he dies.
Okay.
Well, you can either have him die, or you could have him retire. But I do think there does need to be some resolution.
I think they've got where he cannot retire. It's just never going to happen.
No, but he could ascend. He could go to the high table. He could become a manager.
Mm-hmm. He could become he could take over a Continental Hotel or I don't know. I mean, I don't know how far they're going to go with this and when, because at some point you do have to land the plane. I think you just can't keep going.
I mean, tell that to the Fast and the Furious.
Well, the Fast 10 is the beginning of the end.
Yeah,
so 11 is supposed to be the final film.
I doubt that. There'll be more after that.
You think?
Yeah.
I hope not.
It's kind of like Motley Crue. They're never done.
Or like Kiss.
Kiss.
There will be at some point Kiss will just not have any original members in it. I think it'll just be a whole young band just playing Kiss songs and doing the show. Sure,
but I mean, Kiss are just boomer juggalos. So who cares about them?
Yeah, totally. All right. You want to move on to performances?
Yeah, let's go. We got a lot to cover over 3 movies, but I think you have to touch on Keanu Reeves first.
Yeah, that goes without saying. He's the engine of the films. These are star-driven movies, and he is the star that drives them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot to say about his action performances, how he's extremely adept with the weaponry. He spends a lot of time training tactical maneuvers and how to use the weapons and all of that stuff. He's really, really good. He does a lot of martial arts training. And so his physical action sequences are extremely convincing. But I think that the unsung part of it is the dramatic performance.
Yeah.
The love and loss scenes, the grief that he portrays. I mean, he seems perpetually injured, and he acts that very well.
Yeah.
I think his physical acting, even without words, when he's feeling emotion, he portrays it really well.
Yeah, and his body language and everything.
His facial features. I just think he really nails it. I think Keanu doesn't get enough credit for being a skilled dramatic actor.
Yeah, I think it's happened. It's kind of, from after The Matrix and these, I think there has been a sort of gradual acceptance of he's actually very good.
Yeah.
I think everyone finally kind of came around on that. Whereas, I don't know, his sort of bro accent used to be just so easy to make fun of. And,
the guy from Bill and Ted and Point Break.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it made it easy for people to write him off. And it's not easy to do that anymore.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty foolish, is to write him off, because I think he's really great in these movies, and obviously he's already had multiple blockbuster franchises. He doesn't have to work.
No, I suppose not. But he likes to. I mean, he's a worker. You know what I mean? He loves to put in the work. He didn't have to become like a judo master.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He didn't have to train at the 3-gun range, swapping between guns and learn how to do all that stuff in real life.
Those YouTube videos of him doing the training they're pretty unreal.
He's fast as fuck, man. Like with his draw and reloads and everything, he's really, really good.
He's put in the work and he's got the physical attributes necessary. So.
Yeah. And then everyone else involved in these movies doing the action sequences have also done the work. You know what I mean? Like they were
chosen because they're good at that.
They go and do John Wick school basically, and they train for weeks and weeks.
Man, I want to go and do a John Wick school.
Could
you imagine that?
Keanu says everyone thinks they want to go to John Wick school until they're there.
Dude, I was in the army.
Yeah. Well, that was also awful.
I didn't mind the training stuff, the deployment though.
Okay, so all three of these movies have big ensemble casts.
Yeah, they're huge.
So,
I just picked out my favorites. Let me see. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people that I called out.
Okay, I got 6. So
okay. Well, we already talked about
do way more.
Mark Dacascos, so we don't have to talk about him again.
He is one of them. So
yeah.
Okay, I'll start out Willem Dafoe as Marcus in the first movie. It's a pretty small role as he's sort of a mentor character.
So there's one off my list.
Okay, he's like a mentor character to John and a guardian angel.
Yeah.
Like always kind of sniping people when John is in trouble.
I mean, Boondock Saints proved that he does a hired killer really well.
Yeah. I mean, Willem Dafoe's he's my favorite. So even though it's kind of a small role that doesn't last in the series, I had to call him out.
Yeah,
I love him.
I was a little bummed that he died because I really wanted him to go forward as just kind of a recurring dude. So I'll call out next Ian McShane.
Yes, of course.
He's one of my favorites in this whole series. I love him as an actor, especially ever since Deadwood.
Yeah.
I've always been an Ian McShane fan.
He kind of always plays the same guy in a way.
He's kind of a classy, cantankerous guy who's a little bit sinister.
Yeah.
I really like him. He's awesome.
Sinister father figure is sort of the role that he's in.
He's old as fuck though. Like he's in his 70s.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna have him forever. So we have to treasure these
Yeah. Okay.
And I just love the Continental as a setting, and he's pivotal to that.
Yeah.
So I think that Ian McShane is critical, and that's why I was really glad to hear that he was going to be in Ballerina.
The show the Continental is centered on that character, but it's a 1970s version. It's the young version of him.
Okay. So not Ian McShane.
Not Ian McShane.
Someone else doing Winston.
Yeah, it's a young Winston.
All right, who
but
you got?
Speaking of the Continental, Lance Reddick as the hotel
he was
manager.
Next on my list. Our lists are the same. I had Willem Dafoe, Ian McShane, Lance Reddick in that order.
Yeah. So he is great, and it's a character that kind of reveals itself more and more.
Yeah,
that he's more of a concierge.
Simple, but he's actually a badass.
Yeah, you see that by the third movie is he leads his team, and he's the only one that comes back from it, as everyone else gets killed by the High Tables goons. I love Lance Reddick and the way he just delivers his lines. With that accent, and like he takes the dog on, and it's almost like your save the cat trope where you show someone, like, dogs are good indicators of character. So if a dog likes you, then you are good. Like those are just sort of the rules of storytelling.
I think that's the rules of real life too.
It is kind of, unless you have a bad dog, a shifty evil dog.
Yeah, he's really great.
Yeah.
So then I guess for the rest of mine, they're mostly villains, not exactly, but
okay.
Like I really thought that Common was awesome as Cassian. That character was really good.
He did the work to learn the fights and stuff.
Yeah,
too.
Everything I see him in, I like him.
Yeah,
he's a great actor. I think that his acting career is strong. I always like seeing him on the screen. He delivers lines with intensity. Like he's able to deliver like a fierce dialogue, and it seems real. Like he seems a little dangerous.
I'd like to see Common play something other than a henchman at some point. Because I feel like he's always somebody's like.
Well, I mean, he's a professional. He's John Wick's peer in this movie.
And they have unstated history. I like that. Yeah, I like their whole interplay with each other.
And I like to think in my head canon that he lived, even though he got stabbed in the aorta.
Yeah, like basically anyone that John says BC in you, those people
they come back.
Yeah, like that's kind of like this fight is over and I'm not going to kill you.
If Cassian joined in the fight against the High Table, like we get a little cameo. Yeah, Common.
Yeah, because like if actually now I'm thinking about it, because he doesn't say that to Mark Dacascos's character Zero. He doesn't say, because he says, "I'll catch up with you, John." He says, "No, you won't," and then he falls over.
Yeah, and then
dead.
He dies.
Yeah, so all the people he says, that when they say that, that's the sort of parting ways.
It's like he knows that they're still going to be alive. Yeah, and it's all good. All right, who you got?
Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King.
I had him on my list too. He's great.
He's really great, and I'm glad to see.
You gotta have Bonars in every movie.
I like his underworld kingdom that he's built with the homeless people and using the pigeons to transport messages.
Kind of has a Ghost Dog vibe.
Yeah, that's a good movie. We should watch that. And I like that, he's set up to be not a protagonist. He's not an antagonist because he's an ally or whatever.
He's John's ally,
but he's an antagonist to the High Table. Yeah. Yeah. I like that he made it through into the next film.
Yeah, he's in the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so this, like, the Bowery King and John Wick are on the same side.
Well, and he's one of these people that John has spared, right? Like that's their backstory together, is that John basically cut his throat and left him there. He could take his hand off the throat and try and kill John, but he's going to bleed out, or he could keep the pressure on the wound and survive.
Yeah.
And so he's got this sort of a grudge, but a boon owed sort of situation with John.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really cool story. Yeah. And I think this is my last one. I want to call out Halle Berry as Sophia Al-Azwar.
Oh, God. We were this very close to having the exact same list.
Yeah. I give an honorable mention to Ruby Rose, who's a really great villain.
Ruby Rose was good. Alfie Allen from the first movie.
Mm-hmm. Theon. Yeah, he was Theon on my list too as an honorable mention. Yeah. We had some really great villains in this movie.
Michael Nyqvist. The Swedish names are hard. Lots of great people. It was hard to narrow it down, but I didn't want to go for half an hour.
Yeah, go for
just listing people. But Halle Berry was great.
Yeah, she's the manager of the Continental of Casablanca, and she's really great. Those dogs were so well trained. It was really cool. Oh my God! Like, so I was watching these movies, and Carrie's there, and in the first one, she's like, "I heard they killed a dog, and I don't like that. I don't want to watch a movie." And I'm like, "Yeah, they do kill the dog, but okay, ahead of time, but it still hits hard." Yeah. And then in the third one, when they go in there,
and Bronn from Game of Thrones,
Bronn, and she's like, "He doesn't kill that dog, does he?" And I go, "No, I don't think so, because I've seen them all." And then he shoots the fucking dog, and I'm like, "God damn it!" and then of course the dog's wearing body armor, and it lives, and I was just like, "Fuck, can't do this to me."
I know, I couldn't because you knew he was going to kill the dog. Like, he was telegraphing it the whole time. Yeah. Like, basically, I'm taking this meeting and I'm going to punish you for it. Like, you just know it the whole time. And then when he shoots the dog, you're like, this is a 2 dead dog series.
Yeah, God damn it.
How can you do this? You monster. Yeah.
John Wick has like a 307 body count in these movies. Yeah. But the one dead dog is the worst egregious thing.
So sad, Daisy. She's so sweet.
I know. It was a puppy.
A little beagle puppy is like, that's the cutest. It's the most puppiest puppy is the beagle.
Yeah, beagles are great.
Yeah.
So, that's all I got for performances. It's hard when you have these ensemble casts.
When you have Jason Mantzoukas is in there, like
You have people just wanting to do something in these cool movies.
Yeah.
And so,
oh man, Adrienne Palicki in the first one, which she's the female hitman that comes for John in the Continental.
Yeah, that was really cool.
She's great in that. Like, there is so many good people in here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing all these different characters.
Yeah.
The whole time. All right, so now we go to our overview where we get your personal highlight and what worked for you.
Okay. My personal highlight, it's serendipitous. We were just talking about this. It's the Morocco sequence.
Oh.
So from John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, after Bronn from Game of Thrones shoots the dog, all bets are off with Halle Berry, and Halle and John go on a fucking rampage through Morocco.
Yeah, that one is insane.
And they've got two, like the two of them, and they're both lethal gun fu killers with really similar styles to each other.
Yeah.
And then two Belgian Malinois just biting the nuts off of every bad guy in Morocco.
Definitely trained to bite the nuts.
Yeah, and I swear, every time a dog bit someone on the ding dong, I cheered. Like, I just love to watch those dogs tackle people, and they hit hard. Like, you can tell those are hard hits.
Yeah, they launch themselves like missiles.
So, like, the behind the scenes, they have green, like the sort of fluorescent green that you use for green screen, so you can remove it. Mm-hmm. Chew toys on the target spots. So those are what the dog hits. So
Gotcha.
The guy will have it on his forearm or on his chest or on his crotch or whatever. And the dog just goes for those things and bites onto them and savages them. And then they digitally remove the chew toy.
Yeah.
And that whole sequence, I love the way it's choreographed, and with the dog like running up walls and jumping off people's backs and jumping through windows. And yeah, I just love that whole thing.
All right. As far as my personal highlight, this is really hard because the movie, these movies go extra upon extra as you go further.
Uh-huh.
Like, so
they get more heightened.
Yeah. The scenes from the last movie, the third movie, are crazy compared to the scenes from the first movie.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to consider them in perspective.
Yeah. Like John Wick Chapter 1 would not have survived the fall off the roof of John Wick Chapter 3.
No.
Where he falls off the roof of the Flatiron building all the way to the street.
Yeah.
And survives it somehow. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no way. So I think my personal highlight is going to be from John Wick 1, where he goes and retrieves his Mustang.
Oh, yeah.
No,
that's 2.
Is that 2?
It's the beginning of 2.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is right at the very beginning of 2, where they've got the driving scene where he's like shooting the doors off the car, and it's a crazy fighting while in a car scene.
Yeah,
and
they call it gun fu not car fu.
They call it car fu. Yeah, that scene was pretty insane. And then it's just great when he has the mechanic come and take John Leguizamo come and look at the car.
Oh, John Leguizamo.
Can you fix it? Yeah, but
yeah,
basically he destroyed it.
It will be an entirely new car by the time you're done fixing it. Yeah.
So I'm going to call that scene out, but it's also hard not to choose the Zero fight scene where he makes his way up and fights all the mini bosses on the way up, and they, they're all fans.
Yeah, that's a good one. Where one of Zero's shinobi has the drop on John, and Zero kills him, and he says, "Only by my blade, John," or something. And it's like, yeah, that one's really good. I actually, the car scene that you're talking about, I actually call that out in my what worked for you. So I guess okay. I'm double dipping on that. All right,
so just go with what worked for you.
Okay, so obviously, the fight choreography, the gun fu, is so influential and so innovative. It's changed American action movies for the better. It's changed just the way we make action movies. So that's the first thing that worked for me. The stunt driving was number 2, and I most of it is done by Keanu himself, but I wanted to call out the stunt driver, Jeremy Fry, who does that sideways jump coming out of the garage in the Mustang.
Wow.
And they basically built a skateboard ramp, got it all wet, and had him kind of drift around that thing and then jump sideways out of the garage, land, and take off driving.
Damn.
And I thought for sure it was CG, and then I watched the behind the scenes stuff, and they did it. And that is just like that's some of the coolest driving I've ever seen. I do like the Chevelle more than the Mustang, though. I wish he'd kept the Chevelle.
I really like that Chevelle. It's really cool.
It is awesome.
And when he got that modern Dodge, I was like, boo.
I was like, that is the coolest Dodge Charger I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Though. Like usually
it's not as cool as the Chevelle or the Mustang.
But it's like, I've never seen one, because I think they should make a 2-door version of that car.
Yeah.
And they don't. And I've never seen one of those modern Chargers look that good.
Yeah, it was just
it's
totally
as good,
murdered out.
It's as good as it can look, yeah. The incredible ensemble cast and the visual aesthetic, and we've talked about this a few times, the way the world of John Wick is revealed over the course of the 3 films, like onion layers. Like you're just constantly peeling back the layers of, oh, there's more than one Continental. Oh, there's a high table, and there's a person above the high table.
There's an elder.
Yeah, and there's places there's a place where they forge these gold coins. Like the world just keeps revealing more and more, and it just keeps you wanting more and more. Each time a new layer gets peeled back, you want to know what's behind the next one.
Yeah, those are all really cool points. So I doubled a few of yours as far as the car stunts and whatnot. I have that listed, so I won't rehash that. I think that some of the things that we haven't called out yet are the attention to detail with regard to the weapons. I know a fair bit about guns and knives. Obviously, there are people that know more, but I was very happy with the way that they did the various guns and. Like when he's got the M4 with the ACOG sight on the top and whatnot. It's just really well done. That's the sort of thing you want to use in close combat with an assault rifle. And when he was, using the Benelli shotguns, and they chose well. They actually chose the shit you would want. And I really liked the variety of handguns that they featured. I thought it was really cool. Like when the Bowery King gives him that Kimber 45. It's just really cool, kind of classic old school gun that really, really matches that guy's style. And I like how, like in the last movie, they really kind of toy with that weapon sensibility when he's in like the antiques thing and they're using like hatchets and throwing knives and all this crazy stuff. Yeah. And it gets pretty cool with the 6-shooters where he's, trying to assemble them and whatnot. And I just think,
because he's got different museum pieces, and they have pieces that are removed, so he has to disassemble the guns and assemble a working gun.
Yeah.
It was
I
a
think
cool
that
sequence.
They toy with it. That's very meta because this is a weapon enthusiasts. This is for us. And so, and then just more attention to detail, like whenever you get a scene of the administration, they're all wearing nearly matching outfits, like sleeveless, and they have tattoos.
Everyone's heavily tattooed and retro
haircuts and stuff like that, and lots of glasses. And I think that kind of attention to detail, you don't notice it immediately. You just think, oh, that looks like a cool lady. And then you notice the guy later on, the manager guy, he has the same aesthetic. And I think that sort of costuming and writing, like the way that
it's world building.
Keeping this cohesive and making you think. I think that the world building is actually one of my bullet points. It's worthy of a great franchise. Yeah. This could be, of course, it could be a TV show. It could be many movies. It could be a novel series. It could be a role-playing game. It could be a video game that you play in. Open world. Think like a Cyberpunk where you go to a Continental or whatever, and that's your home base where you're safe, and then you go out and do missions. I don't know. This just seems like the world building thing is worthy of like a vast franchise, and I think it's really cool. So those are the things that work for me. Obviously, the fight scenes, but whatever.
So what didn't work for you?
So I was really thinking about this, and I mean, these movies, it's a one-trick pony. Mm-hmm. They do the trick really well, and they innovate on it, and they do permutations, but really, this is just a shooting and fighting movie.
Right.
Shooting, fighting, and driving. Those are the things, and that's cool. And also, so in the first movie, the things that John Wick does, they seem like things that a man could do, like a real person could do.
A human man, yeah.
Yes, a human, adult, male person in good shape, highly trained, on drugs. Yeah. But by movie 3, it's pretty far-fetched. It's fantasy. It's Hong Kong theater at that point. And so I find that to be still enjoyable, but differently. I like the grit of the first one.
You like it more grounded.
Yeah, that's kind of like why I really like Fight Club. Mm-hmm. That shit felt real.
Yeah.
Like how these dudes are just fighting in a basement. And it's just dirty as shit.
Yeah, those are ugly fights.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought, and I like that sensibility of a movie when it feels like this could be a thing. Mm-hmm. I liked it. It just felt extra. And the one thing that I don't call those out as things that I actively dislike. I'm just stating the obvious. But the one thing that I actively disliked was the elder character / plot mechanism. The high table is the high table. Just let that be the authority. I don't like the idea of they're essentially being a king over the ruling body. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a lame mechanism. The actor did a great job. Nothing wrong with that.
I really like that guy.
He was good. The idea that he's, out there, a Bedouin in the desert and the whole deal, that was pretty cool. All of that was fine.
Saeed Tagamui. I'd probably messed up that last name.
Yeah. And
apologies, Samid.
I just didn't like the plot mechanism. I thought it was weak. I didn't think it was necessary. And so, boo on that.
Okay, interesting.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that it's just a way to get it so that he can go back into New York.
Yeah, basically. But think about it. If you're, I mean, I played in a lot of vampire games where councils are ruling places or whatever. Think like the high table. You have him appeal to a particularly powerful member of the high table that maybe owes him a favor or maybe just is intrigued by the idea of Baba Yaga being his personal attack dog.
Yeah.
Have him appeal to one of those guys and have him say, I can pull the strings. I can make it happen to where you're not excommunicado.
You could do the same thing.
Yeah, just by making them be an influential dude. Just have him be some like fancy rich guy from Paris or like some guy in Moscow or a Chinese dude who's got tons of like influence over a vast economic empire. You could do it. You don't need to add a layer to the cake.
Interesting. I didn't butt up against that.
For me, it's a world building. It's a world building error.
Yeah,
because what happens when you ice the elder?
I mean, then you have a power vacuum as
someone else trying to become the elder.
Someone else wants to become the elder. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just like
it's going to be Braun.
Just. I don't know. He had his nuts chewed off.
His legs shot up.
Yeah, so I think he's going to have a hard time moving up. But like that whole thing in the second movie is kind of based on there was a vacancy on the high table and the power struggle over that, right? Between the brother and the sister. So yeah, if the elder got whacked, then there would be a similar thing as people wanted to get into that above everything position.
Yeah, and I think in the fourth movie from the previews, we're going to meet at least one more high table member.
Yeah.
Who tries to broker things or whatever. The Skarsgård guy, right?
Oh, is that who? Yeah.
I think so.
When I'd seen the trailers before, it was before having watched the movies, so it's just sort of like, but this looks like more John Wick stuff.
Yeah.
If I watched the trailer now, I would glean more story from it. Yeah.
So what do you got? What didn't work for you?
So for me, especially with the first movie, the story is very thin. we've talked about this before.
You mean pure? That's what.
Pure. Yeah, that is the more charitable way to look at it. But we talked about this, I think, in the Crow episode. I really don't necessarily love the revenge fantasy mechanism of storytelling, the dead wife kind of storytelling. That doesn't move me, and I think it's been done so much. This does it really well, but it's not a story that I particularly am drawn into. But as the series progresses beyond the initial revenge fantasy and more of the world is revealed, I buy into it more. But the first movie, I probably would not have continued on from. Like, I would have been, oh, that was fun, but I don't need any more of that. It was as the world expanded that I got more interested in it.
I mean, I like the revenge story. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of one of your like, you go to that, like, you really dug on the Northmen, which I also liked. Like, you like that trope a lot more than I do.
Yeah, just like the brutally hunting down and murdering people. Yeah.
And we love Commando and Death Wish and all. We love those movies, but I just feel like it's just been done so much.
Okay. Yeah. So before we get to our final thoughts, I watched an interview where an interviewer asked Keanu Reeves, what do you think about the idea of John Wick finding love again? What do you think? Is that something that should be in the story, or something that shouldn't be? Or
you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. I'll tell you what Keanu said.
No, I don't think so. I think, in a way, when you talk about the purity of it, right? Him finding love again, even though IRL, that would be a healthier thing to do with your time.
He gets on Tinder.
Yeah, it would somehow take away from the purity of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. He said he thinks that he wants to honor the grief of the character and honor that process, and he doesn't think that John would ever allow himself to find love again, even if he felt something, he would push it away. But he thinks that John's wife would have wanted him to find love again.
I think that's true. I think she would have much preferred that he didn't go on a 3-4 movie rampage.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting response from Keanu, because he's very much, you can tell he's thought about John Wick's thoughts. Like, what does John think, not what does Keanu think?
Right.
And I think that's pretty cool.
I think ultimately what you want is John to die heroically. Like, I
think that's what John wants.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. I think that's true. That's that samurai. That's that last Viking thing, right? Is like to have that hero's death.
Yeah.
And I think the story requires that. I think nothing else is really going to feel satisfying but him dying on his own terms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right. So what do we got for final thoughts and a rating? I mean, it's hard if we're rating a franchise.
I rate all 3 movies the same rating.
Oh, okay.
So it's...
so what do you got?
4 stars.
Okay, 4 stars on all 4 of them.
On all 4 of them. And they're all different levels of 4. I think 3 was actually my favorite. And I think you have the kind of reverse feeling of that. But I think they're all different flavors of 4.
Yeah, I think that it's hard. I want to go 5-4-4, but I think it's actually 4-4-4.
Yeah.
And my instinct to go high on the first one is strong because it's got a 93%. So it's close. It's the highest rated one.
You could easily make a case for a 5-star, I think, on the first one,
because it's just so,
from your point of view.
Yeah, it's just so pure and streamlined and grim. It's quick. It's so well paced.
And you'd never believe that's someone's first movie. Like they just came out the gate. It's because they've been making movies for like 20 years.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is Keanu's stuntman's first movie, so Keanu threw him a bone and starred in it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but it's just amazing. So yeah, I go the same. I think that these are fantastic movies. They are the best current action movie series. Like, there's no other action movie that I've seen because this is almost a decade old. It's 9 years old. I can't think of a better action movie in the last decade. Closest thing is Northman, and that's historical
not really
fiction.
An action
it's
movie.
not a true action movie.
Yeah, and I think you will find a lot of times when movies have really great action in them, you open up the IMDb, you see Chad Stahelski's name as that second unit director. You know what I mean? Where they bring him in to shoot the action sequences in their movies.
Yeah, they're like, the director has a vision for the story and whatnot, but they want someone that can make the action feel visceral, because that's its own skill. I'm sure directing a dramatic movie is different than a comedy versus an action.
So like he's the second unit director on Captain America: Civil War. Ooh. And I think we could easily watch that movie and pick out the scenes he directed.
Yeah,
I think there's no question when he directs a fight scene. Like probably that shit in the stairwell with Bucky and the German cops.
Yeah, I was just thinking about
that's
that.
Chad Stahelski the whole way.
Anything close quarters.
Yeah.
So brutal.
And then anything where two teams of superheroes line up in their underwear and run at each other, that's the Russo brothers. They directed that. And all of the stuff that you're like, this movie's amazing. Like when the Black Panther is like jumping down levels of the building, that feels like Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you bring him in to spruce up your movies.
Yeah, he's got a real feeling for like kinetics in a movie. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up, take a break, and then we will get into our final segment.
Welcome back, divers. It's time for our final segment, the one where I ask Dave, what are you into right now?
All right. Well, I got a BOGO. I got two.
Okay.
And that's because I've been listening to a lot of audio stuff.
This is Audible.
Yeah. Well, I got an Audible, and then I just got a podcast.
Oh, okay.
And so the Audible one is Joe Abercrombie, the First Law trilogy. I'm finishing the third book. Probably gonna finish it tonight, actually. Okay. And it is a grimdark fantasy. The Amazon write-up calls it a noir fantasy with unpredictable, compelling, wickedly funny, unforgettable characters. It's an interesting. It's kind of got like 6 points of view that you follow through this thing. It's like a later period feudal system, and it's extremely interesting. One of the characters in the book reminds me of John Wick in some ways. He's an unkillable boogeyman. He's a Northman who is he is a berserker who kind of hates being a berserker. He hates when he goes berserk because he loses control completely. He kills allies and everything, and he sort of hates that. And then there's this crippled torturer who used to be like a super flashy playboy soldier fencer who got captured by enemies in war and tortured and made into like a disgusting cripple. These are his own words, like nothing against people with health problems, but he basically is a self-loather now, and so he becomes an inquisitor. And this book series is darkness, and it's really like sardonic humor. Lots of people I know really like this series, and I'd never got around to reading it. And I just super enjoyed it. So if you're interested in it, I mean, it's been on like a million best of or whatever. And Joe Abercrombie is a modern master, I would call him. If you're really into that, it's lo-fi and gritty fantasy. There is some magic. It's more about the human story. The fights are pretty visceral, but it's mostly character driven. The arcs are really interesting.
Interesting.
So I highly recommend that. And then the other one, the podcast I've been listening to is called Worlds Beyond Number. I think I might have mentioned it before, but not recently.
Yeah.
This is a new narrative play. They call it a new narrative play audio fiction multiverse created by and starring titans of tabletop Brennan Lee Mulligan, Erica Ishii, Abria Iyengar, and Lou Wilson. Designed and curated and scored by Taylor Moore. So this is a live play game where there's a DM and there's 3 players.
And who are all these people? Because those names...
Brennan Lee Mulligan, he's originally from like College Humor, but he does Dimension 0 or Dimension 20, which is probably the second biggest live play show on that you can find. And he also did one of the Critical Role spin-off series. He's like a ginger guy. In my opinion, he's the best dungeon master in the live play world. He's the best. He's amazing. And nothing gives Matt Mercer, love the guy, but Brennan Lee Mulligan plays no favorites, and his drama hooks, like the character, like he fucking stabs like with a stiletto, and it's all story. It's never mechanical wonk stuff. And so I really enjoy this podcast. It's new. So if you're a Patreon, which I joined because I'm a dweeb, and I love these creators, and this is it, they're worth the $5 a month. You get the whole prequel campaign where they did essentially a level 0 thing where the characters are kids, and we've played through games like that too. Yeah. And they do there's 8 episodes at about 2 hours a piece, and that plays through vignettes from their youth up to episode 1. And episode 1 dropped last week. When the divers listen to this, episode 2 will have just come out that day. I will have listened to it. It comes out twice a month. It's only a few hours long. It's a little longer than our podcast, I'd say. It comes out just as often, every 2 weeks, basically. I highly recommend it if you're interested in live play, but you don't want to try to delve into something that was meant for video or something that has a bazillion episodes that you have to catch up on. Worlds Beyond Number is really good. They have a producer, Taylor Moore, who cuts everything. So all of the random, all of the stuff that's not needed is just cut out.
Tangents, talking about rules.
Yeah, it's a pure flow, and he scores the whole thing. It's all set to music that he does, original, and it's just super good. And I think that the first campaign is called the Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, and the characters are really interesting. And it's run by Brennan Lee Mulligan. But the idea behind Worlds Beyond Number is all 4 members are very experienced dungeon masters. And so they're going to go round and round the table running different games, different campaigns, same world, new worlds, one-shots, whatever. And they're just going to go forever. That's their plan. And I'm in 100%. I loved the children's campaign, and I really liked episode 1. So this is my new jam. I thought it was released every week. So like last Wednesday, I was like updating my podcatcher, like
waiting for the new one.
Every hour I was like updating. And then I went to Twitter and I was like, what is up? Yeah. And they're like, other people had already asked, so I didn't have to say what is up, but they were like, we release every 2 weeks. It's in the FAQ, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, boo.
Hey, people have lives. Bi-weekly podcast is much more sustainable.
Yeah, but they're getting paid. They have like 50,000 Patreons or something. Anyway, so those are my 2. I didn't want to cut either of these because I'm super strong on both of them. I would literally recommend these to anybody. Excellent. Anybody that listens to this podcast.
Yeah, and regain my voice there. You're talking about the playing as the children as you create the characters or building in a prequel like that. Yeah, it adds this whole layer of depth to the characters. That's really it's very, very effective, I think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's worth doing. I think I've done it several times with the Game of Thrones games, obviously, but I actually think doing this with D&D characters is worth it too. And these are like 2 out of the 3 of the characters are fairly basic builds: human, wizard, and one's a Furbolg paladin, and then the other one is a custom class, a witch class, which is kind of a cool spellcasty character, but it's also a human. None of this is weird shit. It's just cool to delve into these stories and learn what motivates them. Why do the characters care about each other? Yeah, and it's a good mechanism.
I think it's good for the players as well. It gives you a well to draw from in sort of your character decisions and things like that.
Yeah, and each player remembers moments that were formative for them, and then they draw on them, even if the DM didn't really focus on that.
Yeah,
they didn't
totally.
think about it. All right, so what about you? What are you into right now?
I am continuing the same trend from the last 2 episodes, and this is with music books.
Oh man!
And so
you're on a tear.
I'm on a tear, and so my latest. This one's not a memoir. It is more of like an oral history, and it's called "Sellout: The Major Label Feeding Frenzy That Swept Punk, Emo, and Hardcore 1994 to 2007" by Dan Ozzie.
That is oddly specific years.
Well, it's a very specific time, and it kind of starts with Green Day, and it goes through to Against Me is the last band that's profiled, and kind of going for how the whole music industry in those few years from 94 to 2007 is completely gutted and changes because of the way torrenting and stuff comes in, and album sales just go away as a viable means of income.
Yeah.
And the conclusion of the book, he sort of posits that Against Me is probably the last punk rock band that will ever get signed to a major label, because there's just not any money in it anymore. Like that explosion that really began with Nirvana, concluded by 2007.
Okay.
And so I'm into these sort of books. I've read Dan Ozzie was the co-author of Laura Jane Grace's memoir, so I was a little familiar with him. New York Times called him the last real rock critic alive.
Wow.
He's a really good writer, and the way he strings together the story of all of these bands so that there is a narrative through line between all of them. You can see how the events of one band's career, sort of paved the way for the next band and so on. And the thing that was very interesting, because I've read lots of books on punk rock history and stuff and different scenes, and like England's Dreaming, about the original London scene, or we had the Neutron Bomb as a book about the Gen 1 LA punk scene. This is the first book I've read like this where I was there for a lot of the stuff in it. Sometimes specific shows that I was actually at get called out, and I'm like, I was there for that. I was literally in the audience at that show.
I was at that Warp Tour.
Exactly. It's like, that's so weird, like to read
you're a relic, dude.
A music history book. It's like, it's very grandpa style, like where you're like, oh yes, I remember the Feeding Frenzy from 94 to 07. But I really enjoyed it, and I recommend, if you're a fan of music history and pop culture and punk rock, this is definitely worth adding to the library.
Nice. Sounds good, actually.
All right. You want to give them the call to action?
Yeah. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, as well as YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. Don't forget to leave us a review. 5-star review costs you nothing, but means everything to us.
New episodes of Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse drop the 1st and 15th of every month, and you can find us on all social media platforms across the Metaverse as at Deep Dive the Meta. We are on Twitter, which Dave likes. We're on Instagram, which I like, but we're still on Pinterest, which no one likes.
Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.